Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Borsier. I'm the person who's going to be on the other side of the screen from you for this semester. And I wanted to record an updated version of the welcome video because, frankly, the last one was pretty stale. So I am going to start with just an overview of the lab. So let me share my screen with you. Okay, so let me put on student mode. Your lab, when you arrive, it's going to look like this, your Blackboard site. And I put a little banner here that's a little different from the lecture one if you have me for lecture. If you don't have me for lecture, you're going to have Kate Krieger, and so you'll have a separate Blackboard site for your lecture no matter which instructor you have. So this is our landing page, and that means that you're always going to see the announcements first. So I posted a welcome announcement for you, and then I'll be updating this video here. And I'll also be posting our weekly to-do announcements here. So let's start with that. The very first thing that you need to do is get oriented to our Blackboard site. So the first thing you're supposed to do, if you go over here to Start Here Orientation, you're going to read the syllabus and the schedule. So the syllabus and the schedule are over here in Syllabus and Resources. Of course, you can click this link and it'll jump right there, but I'm going to go to Syllabus and Resources and the syllabus and schedule. And this is my hybrid course. Okay, so the hybrid syllabus, it's really not going to be any different than the in-person one. Than the online one. Here's all my hybrid sections. So let's talk about the overview of the course. Okay. Lecture is worth 75% of your microbiology grade, and lab is worth 25%. So what I did to make it easy for you to kind of keep track of your score is I made our lab out of 250 points. And so 250 points total. And the way that's going to break down is you're going to do the lab exercises, and I'm going to get to them in a minute. There are going to be 3 exams, and those points are increasing, and that's on purpose. I wanted the very first exam to be lower stakes than the rest because, you know, as a student, I remember never really knowing how the exam was going to look and how I would measure up to that exam for the first one. And so I always appreciated if they were lower stakes. Then we are going to have an unknown investigation where you're going to identify 2 bacterial unknown species and write a report about that. And I've really structured a lot of practice into that. So this is worth 10% of your lab grade. But I also built in 2 assignments where you write the conclusion and discussion section for those reports for 4 practice unknown bacteria. So you're actually going to do 8 conclusion and discussions because you can do that twice. And those are extremely low stakes. So you're going to write 4 of them, but it's only for 5 points. That way, you know, if you don't do well, you can learn from the experience and do better on the unknown. And I actually built in more things for you for that unknown, but it's at the end of the semester. So I said I was going to get to lab exercises. So the lab exercises, let me go back to the lab here. So now we're going to go to Unit 1. And these are the links to your lab exercises. The lab exercises are held in Google Forms. So when you click on this one, let me just pull up. These are my view of the lab exercises, and it's easier for me to show it to you this way. You're going to do this Google form, and it's set up as an interactive Google Forms. So if you did like by 151, they also use Google Forms for the online and hybrid labs. So you're going to fill out this Google form, and it's interactive. So you're going to read a little background and answer some questions. You're going to watch a video, answer some questions. Maybe this lab safety one isn't the best one to give you an example of. How about aseptic technique? That one's also due the very first week. So the important parts of the Google Forms are these learning outcomes. These are the things that you should be able to do by the end of the Google form. And these are the things that I'm going to be testing on in the exams. So when I wrote the exams, I sat down and looked at all of these learning outcomes and I said, okay, explain the purpose and goals of aseptic technique. All right, how can we ask some questions based on that? And sometimes the questions are going to be exactly like what we have here on the Google Forms. And other times, because the Google form lets us write longer answers, there'll be application type questions on the Google Forms that allow you to really dig a little deeper into the concepts. So here, this is a procedure, and then here's some questions. This one's actually a really good example. Some of the questions on here are not right or wrong questions. Okay, some of these questions are going to be ones that help you work your way through immersing yourself in the concept. So if I was in lab with you and I introduced the idea of aseptic technique, which is this form, I would stand in front of the room with my PowerPoint slides and I would say, okay, so somebody here, can you tell me what sterile means? Just in your own words, what could sterile mean? And then I would say, what does sterile look like? Like if you pulled apple juice out of the fridge and you looked at it and you're like, oh, gross, I am not drinking that. That's got microbes in it. That is not sterile. What does that look like? What would be that indicator? So some of these questions are not right or wrong. Okay. I don't want you to panic as you're going through them. And the best part about these is that when you submit the form, you're going to get a submission receipt in your email, and you can view your submission. And you can also, when you do that, you can see what things you got right or wrong. And I wrote feedback on all of the questions to kind of help explain why something is, for example, why this is a yes or no answer. The other part of Google Forms is that I tried to give you a lab experience. So rather than just like showing you one set of results, boring, I tried to give you some variety so that you could choose your own adventure. So if you notice, there are 7 sections in this Google form, and it gives you like a little status bar at the top when you guys are working through it. It'll jump to, so if you choose bench 4, it's going to jump all the way to section 6, right? So don't panic when you see it do that. Now, at the end, like I said, there's going to be some application questions. Now, most of these Google Forms, let me go back to the types of assessment. So most of these things are going to be based on you just submitting the form in time. And so the idea is that you are, spending the time practicing, working on learning those learning outcomes, and kind of self-testing, okay? So I'm rarely going to be testing or checking that you submitted correct answers on the first time. Of course, you can always go back and change your answers. I mentioned that. Occasionally I will check on content. So like if you have to do a math problem and, you know, there's a right or wrong answer for that one, I'm definitely going to check that. Or if I ask you an application question, you know, yes or no, explain, I'm going to look that you explained, right? And I'll be checking your tables. Sometimes there's places where you're going to upload your notes. So when you get your results from your bench and you're making your observations and you're forming your conclusions, you're supposed to be recording that in a table. And so I will be checking that you've submitted all of that. At the end of the week, when everything closes and I do go through and grade them, I'm going to transfer your grades from the Google Forms to Blackboard. So even though it's set up in Google Forms like a quiz and it might give you a score or shows you right or wrong answers, that is not your grade. Your grade is what I'm looking at and what I transfer to Blackboard. And when I do that, I'll send you an email that says lab grades are posted. This is what was graded and this was how, right? So I will keep you up to date on that stuff. Now, there are other ways for you to keep yourself on task and be self-testing so that you're prepared. And I'm gonna show you that too. Okay. Now, so I don't want to go too far off of our orientation, but we're here. If you notice, there's the lab exercises in PDF. I'm in Unit 1, and these are your labs for the Google links to the Google Forms, but I printed all of the labs in a PDF form, the whole thing. And that's really for you to print out yourself, and you can fill it in like a worksheet, and then you have access to all the benches. So you can try different options. Like if I had a different result, would my conclusion change? And so you can practice it that way. I also recorded office hours for some of the labs as best that I could. And these are Zoom office hours. So, you know, things that I talked about with students. And then there's practice worksheets. So the practice worksheets, let me see if the practice worksheets are also a Google Doc, and they're going to ask you to make a copy. That's so that you can fill it in on your own. And you can save that and print it and manipulate it however you want. So notice they start with those learning outcomes. That's really important that you focus on those learning outcomes. And then there's some different ways for me to ask questions of you, okay? So lots of ways for you to practice and study for the exams. So let's go back. Exams are going to be held on Blackboard, and they are self-grading. Okay, so they are true, false, multiple choice, matching, ordering, and short answer, meaning fill in the blank. Okay, so 1 or 2 words. Okay, don't write complete sentences. So these questions directly correlate to those learning objectives, which I mentioned to you. And the exams are going to be self-graded. So they're going to automatically post that grade as soon as you complete the exam. However, you do have the option, and I know a lot of instructors don't do this, and so I want to tell you that I do, because I trust you that you're taking this class to improve yourself, for your lives and your families, and for your future careers, so that you need this content, and you're learning it because you're going to use it. So I actually open the exams after the week closes on Fridays. The exams automatically open back up so that you can see not only your score, but what questions you got correct and incorrect, and what the correct answer was. Okay, and if you review the FAQs, I do talk about what you should do if you find something that you have a question about and you want to talk to me about it. Okay, so let's go back to the FAQs then. let me just show those to you just real quick, because I got to get back to the other stuff. So the FAQs are in my signature. Oh dear, they're also in the syllabus and resources. Let's see. They're going to be in the communication for lab right there at the top. So they're there. Read through those because it's all these common things that I've experienced over the last years of teaching this lab. Now, back to the orientation. So the syllabus and schedule. Now the schedule, we are the hybrid lab. Okay, so this is our lab schedule. We're going to break it up into weeks. And for the first 5 weeks of lab, or 5 weeks of the semester, we're going to meet in person. Now you've signed up for a Tuesday or Thursday class. So we're going to meet half the class on Tuesday and half the class on Thursday. And the enrollment hasn't closed yet, so I can't tell you yet what day of the week that you're meeting, but I will send you a separate, very specific announcement letting you know. So the first week, these are the things you must complete by Friday. Our closing day is always on Friday. You're going to need to complete the orientation, the lab safety Google form, and the aseptic technique Google form. When we meet in person, face-to-face, we're going to do some of the lab safety activities, and we're going to do some of the aseptic technique activities in real life. And we'll also begin lab 3 so that it has time to grow for the next lab in real life so that you can have that experience. The idea is that the experience is going to help enrich your understanding of the Google Forms. And there was a lot of intention put into which labs we would do first, and then also when we would stop coming in person and go home. And the truth of that is that I tried to do the absolute most important labs to do in person early on, so that when life happens, and now with COVID and Omicron and the new variant in France, we don't know what's happening with that. When that kind of comes in on us, we are also trying to negotiate coming to lab to do the exercises. Okay, and so we're doing the first 5 weeks, and we're doing the first like 9 labs -1 according to that schedule, so that you can get comfortable with me, with how the labs are structured, with kind of that assist of having the lab physically in person as well as on the computer. What is going to be graded is your computer Google form submission, okay? And that was intentional too. That is an incredibly important thing that I built into this class. Even though we have an online or a hybrid lab where we're meeting in person, I did not want to assign any points to you coming in person because life happens, right? And I didn't want you to be penalized because your kid's school got canceled, or you had to go to work, or you were exposed and you need to quarantine. Please, even if you think it's allergies or you have just a little sore throat, don't come to lab. Like, I didn't want to incentivize you or put pressure on you to feel like you had to come when you know, you'd be putting yourself and other people at risk. Okay, so that was very, very intentional, and just want you to know that. Okay, so let's go back to the orientation. The next thing you need to do, oh yeah, here's the schedule. It's coming. So just so you know, I'm working on it. Back to the orientation. Now, you should read these, definitely read these, because these are the things that I'm telling you now. You are required to join the Google chat. So this is a send me an email link. It'll send me an email it'll also send you an email. So it'll look like it only sent to you, but I get it. I'm requiring you to have access to the Google Chat, not necessarily for you to use it. I use the Google Chat for office hours. And so this is a really good place for you to submit your questions or interact with me. I'll chat back and forth with you. Right now, the room's empty because I started a new room from last semester, but this is where we'll do it. We'll have threads going. Don't be confused if you see questions in there from my lecture class. It's all one big micro class, okay? All right, orientation. Next thing you need to do is read this handout. The link to the handout is here, but the real thing is in the syllabus and resources menu, assignment and Dropbox's resources. So this is some of our assignments later in the semester are going to require you, like the unknowns are going to require you to submit to a Dropbox on Blackboard instead of a Google form. So those are your resources there. And I will talk about those more. I'll send you a full video and explanation then. Next thing you need to do is practice that Dropbox. So there's an article here for you to read, questions for you to answer. These are opinion questions just from us to get to know each other. And this is the Dropbox for you to submit them. So that is the orientation. Let me go back to the syllabus and see if there's anything that I want to explain to you. Talk about attendance. You do need to be active on Blackboard to be considered attending, okay? Communication etiquette for the chat, academic honesty, grading. No, I think that's pretty much it. Now, let's talk about the things that you need to attend lab the very first day, okay? So what is this? These are my slides from our very first day. You can find my slides if you go to Unit 1 and you go all the way to the bottom. There's the practice worksheets, and then there's this folder with my slides. So these are the slides that I'll be showing you when we meet face to face. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take all your stuff and you're going to put it in these cubbies in the sides of the lab. And you can't have food or drink in a microbiology lab. That is absolutely forbidden. So they need to be out of sight too. So you can't have your Frappuccino with the straw exposed, sitting there floating in the air. We're gonna have plexiglass dividers set up across the bench. And there'll be 2 open seats on each bench. So you can sit in either one of those open seats as you like, assuming there's not somebody there. And then we'll talk about disinfecting your bench. The things that you will need. Okay, you will need something to write with, right? You will need the lab PDF. So let's go back here. Remember, Unit 1, the lab PDFs are here, okay? Now, so you're gonna need these first 3 lab PDFs. Actually, I'll tell you, I wrote to the printing place and I asked them to print them for you. So you probably don't need to do that, but you should read them first so that you have an idea of what we're going to do, okay? Go back here. Okay. And then, and you also need your lab coat or cover up, okay? So your lab coat or cover up. When you come to a micro lab, you have to be dressed in the proper attire, okay? So these are ways to minimize your exposure to the microbes. This is a biosafety level 2 lab, meaning they're opportunistic pathogens. They're not very virulent, but if you give them the opportunity, they could cause an infection, right? So things like getting them in your mouth or open skin, things like that. So you need to be wearing long pants, closed-toed shoes, okay, when you come in the door. You also need to bring yourself a lab cover-up or a lab coat. This needs to be something long sleeve, and it needs to zip up or button up, okay? You don't want to be pulling it over your head because then you're smearing microbes from the front of your lab coat or cover-up all over your face as you take it off, Okay. You need to bring that in a plastic bag. Okay, because that plastic bag is going to be what you put it in at the end of the 5 weeks. We're going to leave your lab coat or cover up in the lab for the duration of our hybrid portion. So it's going to stay there with all the microbes on it. Then at the end of the 5 weeks, you'll put your lab coat and cover up in that plastic bag, and then you can take it home. That way you're not smearing microbes in the inside of your backpack or on your car seat, things like that. And you can take it and shake it right into the washing machine then without touching it, and wash it. And a good wash with a washing machine is perfectly fine. This is not a biohazard lab coat, right? Okay, so you need proper attire, you need a lab coat or a cover up. You also need a hair tie if you have long hair, okay? Because we're going to be working with incinerators to sterilize our loops, and they have a ceramic core. They get so hot, they get literally red hot, okay? And so you need to have that tied back. You also don't need to be, draping hair across petri dishes or tubes, things like that. And the last thing you'll need to come to lab is going to be a Sharpie. Now we're going to have Sharpies in the bench drawers for you to use, but they tend to grow legs and walk away. And I don't think it's intentional. I think that just when everybody packs up, they end up grabbing the Sharpie and taking it home with them. So a regular Sharpie, and I don't mean the fine, ultra fine point with the teeny tiny tip. I mean just the big black Sharpie, with the cone tip, like you might imagine. Blue or black ink are best. Dark colors like purple and green still don't show up very well on petri dishes and tubes. Okay? Now, one very fun thing. So those are the 4 things you have to have: attire, lab coat or cover up with a bag, hair tie if you have long hair, and a Sharpie. And the PDFs I'll provide for you. Okay. The last thing you need to bring is something fun. We're going to be doing the environmental sampling lab, and that means we're going to swab 4 different things, like body things and environmental things. So we're going to take a sterile Q-tip, a sterile swab, and you're going to swab the back of your throat or your glasses or something cool that you bring in. So you could bring in, I've had people bring in the most crazy things: retainers. One esthetician, she brought in the eyelashes from one of her clients. People bring in their work badge if they work in healthcare, and you're constantly swiping your badge. They bring in their badge. They bring in things that are of interest to them, like the top of an essential oil bottle, or the dog's dish, or a dog's chew toy. So all kinds of very interesting things that you might want to see what kind of microbes are on there. Now, if you can't bring something in, which I've literally had people swab their hedgehog or their cow, or their cat's mouth, or their babies, whatever that you don't want to bring in, you can take a Q-tip or a swab at home and get it just a little bit damp if the thing you're swabbing isn't already damp. Like, if you're going to do your dog's mouth, that's already moist. You don't need to do that. It's just if we get it damp, we actually pick up more microbes. And you swab, you just rub the area that you're trying to sample, and then put that in a plastic baggie, and bring that in. Do that as close to the lab time as possible, because the microbes are not going to be viable on the swab. So we want to, shorten that transport time as much as we can. Okay, so 5 things, right? Proper attire, lab coat or cover up, your hair tie if you need it, a Sharpie, and your things that you want to swab. You can bring up to 4 things, okay? I will provide the lab PDFs for you, but please do read the exercises before you come so that you know what we're going to be doing, because the experience is meant to pair with those exercises. Okay. Let me just share my screen one last time and see if there is anything else that I want to show you on. Let's go. Oh, one last thing, if you are emailing me, please, you must include your section number in the subject of every email. That's going to be that alphanumeric section number. That is because I am teaching so many different sections this semester, and it's going to be very hard to keep track of everything if you don't tell me, okay? So let's see. The last thing I guess I would say is there are lots of resources for you here. Please do click around through them. The communication, when and how I have office hours. Because we are a hybrid class, I'm going to start with office hours via group chat on Monday mornings. And then after we all go home, the office hours will be via group chat on Wednesday afternoons. Once I'm home, so I'm at my condo in Grand Rapids, and I don't have Wi-Fi here, and so I'm going to go home to Mason, and I have a whole different setup there, and much better Wi-Fi where I can Zoom with you. So then we'll have a standing Zoom meeting on Thursdays, I think it is, just for lab, so that we can talk about labs after we go home. So please click around, send me any questions that you might have on the Google chat. And gosh, I'm really looking forward to this semester with you. Yeah, so I will see you on Tuesday or Thursday in person. Okay,